So we're in our week 5 of our series Legendary. The whole idea of it is this idea that, for a lot of us, we've heard about Jesus. We've heard stories, whether it's cartoons or maybe you did some time in Sunday school when you were a kid, or maybe you've been to church your whole life, or maybe this series is your first actually paying attention. But we get these pieces and we start to know as much about Jesus as we do one of the Kardashians. We're just I kind of heard this. Someone said this. I watched this. I didn't want to know this. And he becomes more of a legend than actually someone that we know. But Scripture is full of places that we know that God says, I don't want you to just know about me. I want you to know me. So as we're into week 5 of Legendary, we're walking through this timeline. And it is the end of July now. So the question is, by a show of a wave or however confident you are. Some people, when you say raise your hand, they do this, they just kind of like you're riding a motorcycle, to keep two on the ground kind of thing. Maybe some of you will raise it. How many of you are done with vacations for the summer? Are we done? None of the kids raised their hands or teens. Oh, one of them did. I'm done. Air conditioning the rest of the summer. We've done 2, right? That was kind of a half. You kind of committed late.
Oh, I thought you meant are we going on?
Yeah, you are. I know you are. I talked to your parents. Anyways, yeah, pastor knows all. No. The reality is we got to go on 2 pretty sweet vacations, camping in Utah, and then we went to Illinois this past week. But and we've already started talking about next summer and the reunion with my family. But there's something about next summer that I'm looking forward to, and I want you to guess. It's something that doesn't happen every summer. Anybody want to guess? Okay. Here's the next clue. The first clue has to be it doesn't help a lot, or else I can't get to my other clues. The next clue is I'm going to be watching NBC a lot more than I ever do. The network. The Olympics. Yes, the Summer Games in Paris. The last Summer Olympics were delayed, so it's actually only been 3 years since the 2021. And where were they? They were in Tokyo, right? Or in Japan? Yeah, the games there. This is a time when all of a sudden I care more about badminton than I ever have in my whole life. I want to hear the national anthem more than I've ever wanted to do in my whole life. I don't complain when I hear it, but I'm not listening to it on the radio or on my phone every day. But all of a sudden, seeing the flag, hearing the national anthem, cheering for our athletes, running around a track or whatever it is, or even the stories, I look forward to that. Now, here's a fun fact about Olympics. Did you know that you get paid for getting a medal? Anybody know that? I had no clue. If you get a gold medal and you're on the United, they pay for their lodging and their travel, but they don't get paid just to play. So if you're a U.S. athlete going to the games, you get paid for medals. If you win a gold medal, you get $37,500. Okay? Now you might say, that's legit. I can buy a Honda Accord. That's great. All right? But if you are on Singapore's national team, in American dollars, you make, it's $1 million in their money. But if you're on the Singapore team and you win a gold medal, you get 700,000 American dollars. Pretty legit. Now, here's the thing, though. I use those 2, $700,000 for a gold medal. If you get a silver, you get $300,000. It's this huge drop off, and then it's a little bit less for a bronze. For United States, $37,500, it drops about $15,000. The gold medal is the thing, and countries see that as we're not going to pay you to play, but we're going to pay you to win, because we don't just want to compete. We don't just want to show up. We don't just want to be proud that we're there. We want to be number 1. We want to see our flag. We want to see our anthem. And I think that that's just kind of a picture. When I was reading that, I was seeing the drop-off between how much they're paid for medals. I was thinking about how much it is just a part of my upbringing and maybe the culture I've grown up in. One of the cultural streams in my life has been it is always better to be number one. And I've gotten older and kind of learned, and maybe some of you have learned this too, that the grass is not always greener on the other side. It's actually always greener where you water, but that's a whole other talk, right? The grass is always greener on the side that gets watered, the side that gets invested in. But all employees, it seems, wish that they were the boss or the manager, the owner. All of the kids wish they were adults, right? All of the people that are passengers in the car wish they were driving the car, or so on and so forth. I shouldn't say all. But there seems to be this kind of cultural stream of, if you get the silver medal, well, that's nothing. You should be the gold medal. But then we grow up and we realize, kids, I know that you wish you could be adults, but adults wish that they had a nap time in their day. Adults wish that they didn't have the responsibility they had. They wish they could be on that side just a little bit more. Employees that wish they were the boss, bosses go, I wish I didn't have to solve all the problems when you call in sick. I wish that I didn't have to pay the lease that you don't have to pay. I wish I had the freedom to just go to another job sometimes when this is stressful. But the boss, the owner, the person who's in number one spot has responsibility that others don't have. So on and so forth. Living in a world, though, where it seems like in everything from our advertisements to the way we talk about anything we do, it has to be up and to the right, or it's almost like we see it as failure. Oh, just a silver medal? You're not going to a gold from here? That kind of thing. There are kind of two realities, though, or these are kind of the realities. And here's kind of what I wrote down, though, about just when I thought about this. Like, why is it that we think being number one is better? Here's what I wrote down. Number one seems to get the most payout. It seems to. I'm using that word on all these. Being number one seems to get the most payout. It seems to get the highest salary, the bigger scholarships for college or whatever, the biggest trophy, and especially the most attention. If you're number one video on YouTube or Instagram, or if you are this, you're getting the biggest payout. No one really remembers who it was that was second stepping onto the moon. Do you guys remember? If you did, that'd be amazing. Say Buzz Aldrin. So he couldn't get second and first, right? They couldn't give him the gold and the silver. But yes. No, but you were in the right category there, right? We remember who was first, right? I also think that number one seems to be remembered more. Number one seems to be remembered. We don't always remember. I mean, I can't even tell you who won the last however many World Series or Stanley Cups. But the sports I do follow, it's hard for me at times to remember who was second. Now, this was a team that was undefeated. The second place team was undefeated in the playoffs. Like a great feat. But they don't give banners for Super Bowl runner-ups. They don't have banners for the runner-up of a pageant or of a race or whatnot. But the last thing, number one seems to get to make the decisions. It always feels like if I'm not number one, I don't get to make the decisions. If I'm riding shotgun or if I'm in the back seat, I don't get to make the decisions. Now, I still will say what the decisions should be if they, need to hear it. Because of course they're subconsciously asking me, non-verbally asking me, please, Jared, tell me what you would do if you were driving, right? But most of the time it seems like if you're in the top spot, if you're the parent, if you are the owner, if you're the boss, if you're the one in front, you get to make all the decisions. And it just always seems like that would be better. The problem is that the higher we get, the harder it is for us to have people around us to support us. The higher you are, the farther you fall, the harder you fall. There's different ways to put it. That it gets lonely at the top. But we live in a culture that says, get to the top. And the people that are at the top are writing biographies about how the road to the top and being at the top actually was the worst thing that ever happened to them. That money didn't make it better. That all of the resources, all of the people worshiping them didn't make it easier to be at the top. that in reality, no matter where you are in the spectrum of life and power and authority, that we still struggle with the same brokenness inside of us. We still are trying desperately to get through the day, the minute, the hour, the year, or life. And some of us, we're looking forward to thriving. We're making goals. I want to thrive. And some of us are saying, I want to make goals just to survive, just to make it through, just to get through this. A theme that we're going to talk about today that Jesus brought up to Peter is this idea of self-service versus self-sacrifice. Self-service versus self-sacrifice. This idea of doing things for myself, being that independent, I've got this person, not just the idea of like self-care. That's not what I mean by self-service here. And I don't think that's what self-service means at all. It doesn't actually mean selfish. It can. But the idea that all I see is me and my needs first versus self-sacrifice, that actually, in order for the greater good to occur, it might mean that some of the things that I want are sacrificed. And sacrifice doesn't mean that they are destroyed. It means they are given freely. That if you have kids and you have sacrificed part of your budget to feed them, you know? Like that's not a thing where it's like just wasted. Now, if you have boys, it might feel like it's just like the food is just gone, right? Just sacrifice. But like to give to other people is a self-sacrifice. So in other words, it's making ourselves second. In other words, it's making ourselves a servant to others, which is a beautiful thing. And actually something that I think every one of us, whether you have roommates, whether you just have classmates, teammates, or soulmate, whatever, the idea of being a servant to the people around you is really the hope of the world. But it's so difficult. You know why? And this is, you might want to write this down on your phone. People are annoying, right? You're all thinking it. I had to say it. It's not in my notes. So I'm going to put up a little timeline here. Back in chapter 4, Jesus said something, or Peter wrote something that allowed us to know that Jesus, when he started out, was doing some stuff with baptisms, and he was kind of teaching a little bit, gathering disciples. But then in chapter 4, verse 17, Matthew writes this. From that time on, Jesus began to preach. Jesus began to preach, repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. And this was a brand new sermon. After this was the Sermon on the Mount. After this, he started feeding the 5,000. He started doing all this different stuff that we kind of know and we piece together. But this was the order. Before that, he wasn't doing this. But after this, chapter 4, he started to do that. Now, that went on several chapters. And Matthew got to a place now, and you can see this in the timeline here. Chapter 4, or go to the next one right here. Next timeline. A shift to proclaiming the kingdom. Then all of a sudden he's teaching parables, doing with parables. He's doing miracles. He's sending out his disciples, if you remember that. And he's responding to questions from people, questions from his family, questions from his disciples, his followers, the crowds, even the religious leaders, the powerful other rabbis, people like that. Now, that's kind of what we get to know. That's a lot of what our songs are about, the different stories. That's what a lot of the sermons that you hear are about. But there's kind of another shift that he does here. He still heals people, but he shifts more to a smaller group here. Now, Kurt just read it. I'll just read a part of it. Chapter 16. From that time on, Jesus began to explain. See how he used the same words? From that time on. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must, I love that he uses the word must here, like no other way. He must be killed on the third day, be raised to life. And now what we see in the timeline is he shifted from these large groups, groups, to more of a, go ahead and put it up there, he shifted to much more of a small group investment. much more of a small group investment, and he changes his tone to talk more about emphasizing the high cost of following Jesus. Because there were some people following him, and they just loved following around because, hey, you know what? 2 out of 3 times we get free food. 2 out of 3 times somebody gets healed. Like, this is amazing. It might even be someone I know. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. But what Jesus realizes is I'm getting closer to the time where the hardest part of this plan is going to take place. And I need my followers to be on the same page. Have you ever gotten to a place with a group of people? Maybe you've been working with them, or you've been just like friends with them for a long time, and you are at a place where all of a sudden you realize we're not on the same page about this. And we need to pause this. Sometimes you just can't. You're like, well, we're about to go on stage. I'll see how it works. Jesus wasn't about to do that. So it says from this time on, he devoted more time to emphasizing the hardest part, the most difficult to understand part of his plan. And that was that he needed to suffer and die in order for people to be saved. Now, in a few weeks, Becky and I are going to celebrate 19 years of marriage. Hold your applause. Hold your applause. She's not here. I give her 51% credit, minimum. Now, when you've lived with someone for 19 years, you learn things about them. But if you're actually a healthy person, you learn stuff about yourself too. Becky and I have many differences, but here's the difference I'll talk about today. And believe me, both of what we are is needed in a relationship. But you might relate today with a friendship or a partnership, however. Becky doesn't talk as much as me. All right? Now, I'm going to put that in a little bit more academic terms here. I will have one thought in my head. That thought could be about anything. One thought in my head, you're going to get minimum 1,000 words. One thought, 1,000 words from me. From Becky, it's the opposite. 1,000 thoughts. You know what I get? 1 word. How many of you guys can point to someone right now that's kind of like that in here? Can we do that? It's not a shameful thing, because here's the thing. They are needed. Because Becky thinks things through, whereas I get one thought and you are hearing all about it. And she'll say, wow, it doesn't sound like you've thought that through. I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm just talking right now. This isn't on TV or anything. We're not recording this. This is how we like to call it verbally processing. And a lot of times the beauty of that is me verbally processing will stir up new thoughts for her, will stir up new thoughts for me. It can kind of put a nice stop sign on something before it gets too far in my head or too far in her head or whatnot. But the beauty, and a lot of you will know this, the beauty of what Becky does, she thinks things through before she speaks. Yes, there's times when I'm like, so what are you thinking? And she's like, I'm still thinking, Or sometimes it'll be, I don't have words for that yet. Or I need to think about that more. But when she does speak, none of the words are wasted. There's no fluff. It's like you just wrote something. Can we just write this every word you say down on paper? I mean, we could make money somewhere. Somebody wants to buy this. See, her words are very valuable. And my thoughts are very valuable. My thoughts are worth thousands of words, and her words are worth thousands of thoughts. Now, there's a lot of other beautiful things, and we could talk about how that's been fun. When you've repented to each other of certain bickering, it becomes funny to talk about now, and I'm sure that'll come up someday. But here's the reality. Each one of us is probably in one of those camps. I actually gravitate more towards friends that are more like my wife in that way, that they don't speak a lot of words. They're like, that's your job, Jared, in this friendship. You go for it. But here's the reality. Jesus' followers have those characteristics. And one of them that is similar to me, except in a first century Palestinian way, which I don't know if that's any different, is Peter. And Peter, just like the video said, earlier in chapter 16, Jesus is saying to his disciples, he's got them sitting around, he's probably standing, and they're sitting, and he says, everybody has an opinion about who I am. Basically, he's gone viral. Everyone has an opinion. They've heard about the miracles or the parables or the different things. And Jesus says to them, non-rhetorical, who do you say I am? And Matthew seems to want us to know that the person to speak up first is Peter. Peter, everybody else, you can see their computers and their heads are going like, well, I know this, and I've thought this, and you said this parable that one time, and you did say this. Peter's like, one thought, he's speaking, and he says, you are the Christ. You are the Son of God. If this were Price is Right, Jesus would go, let's see if it's on the board. That's the number one answer. Brings Peter up, right? We're going Price is Right now. Come on down, Peter, right? And he says all these beautiful things about Peter, the greatest things your rabbi could say about you. Like, this is that moment, like, if you're on a sports team and your coach says, I just want to bring Peter up here and let you guys all know that he's doing this right. That the way he kicked that ball, the way he ran or whatever, like, he says, Peter, like, you could not know that if you were not praying, if you did not hear that from the Father, from God. He says, Peter, like, your future is so great. Like Peter's feeling good. Like, I should speak up more often, right? Like, he's feeling good. 3 verses later, Jesus has just told them, I'm going to suffer and die. And Peter goes, I'm going to speak up again. This time, not in front of everybody. It says in verse 22, Peter took him, meaning Jesus, aside and began to rebuke him. Oh, Peter, right? You're just like, come on now. Come on, man. You got this. And began to rebuke Jesus. Never, Lord, he said. That's kind of like the way that we talk to our kids when they're about to do something to hurt themselves. We're like, no. Never in the street. Never do this. Like, he's putting his foot down to the Son of God. This shall never happen to you. Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. And in this way, it's actually a Greek word, not like the name Satan. Like, the name of Satan is Lucifer, but the word Satan means like deceiver, tempter, liar, right? So he's calling him a liar. He didn't call him Lucifer here. Get behind me, you liar. You are deceived. You are a stumbling block to me, and you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Now, this is pretty harsh. Like, if this were like a job, like Peter would go to HR after this. You know, like his boss just like embarrassed him. In fact, if we have the verse still up there, I like to think in verse 22 when it says, Jesus turned and said to Peter, like, you know, Peter like wanted to like get him away. What some scholars say, and I actually like imagine, is that it says Jesus turned. I actually think Jesus was thinking, you know, others are still thinking this, so I want everybody to hear this. And he turned so others would hear it. So that Peter and that others would know, guys, that's not an option. Because here's what Peter was hearing. Everything we've built, all the work we've done, everything that we've dreamed about, Jesus, you're saying is going to fall and crumble to the ground. He was saying, Jesus, this isn't the way it works. I know better. How many of you know better than your bosses? I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. It's okay. But that happens a lot, right? Like, it's really difficult to just sit there if the boss is going to make a decision that is going to like run what we've been doing into the ground in our opinion. It's very hard to trust in these moments. Yet what Peter does here is just go against what God has come for. I can't believe God would allow this for no good reason. I think that's the most common reason for doubts. There's kind of like a list of kind of general reasons that people don't believe in God and don't follow God. And one of them is, I cannot believe that God will allow fill in the blank to happen. And we can just watch the news. We can just look at our prayer requests, right? That I think every one of us here knows, or every one of us here might have been in or is in a situation in your life where you're like, how can I believe in a God that allows this to happen? And you can put all kinds of things in there. What we're really saying is, I don't see a good reason for this. I don't see any way that this could ever be considered good. And we can talk about this more. This might be more of a pastoral care thing, and this can sound like cold comfort here, because I would need to have a conversation with you to truly answer a question you've got personally. But what I believe is that to trust God is to say, God, even when things are the worst, I can believe that you see things differently than I do. One of the ways that I can prove this is in my life, and I'll bring up my wife again. I've had only a few girlfriends in my life, and I am so glad God didn't answer any of my prayers to marry those ones, right? And can I get an amen? Maybe from my kids, right? Existence. Like that is such a small thing, right? Would my life be totally wrecked without her? I don't think so. I think God is still faithful. But there's something about in those moments in high school, in college, where I went, where are you at, God? How in the world could this heartbreak that I'm feeling be something good? And that is such a small relationship thing. But I want to keep it at least above shoulders as far as depth right now. We're always looking for the most comfortable way, the most easy way to get something done. And so what Peter is saying is, Jesus, look, you don't have to, that's your plan. What if instead of you dying, you stayed alive, we built up an army, and you just ruled? And you just saved us from Rome, and you did all these things without dying, without us looking like fools. And Jesus says to him in the most harsh, non-understanding way, or at least that's what Matthew wanted us to remember. Jesus might have said some other stuff, but Matthew wanted us to hear the main point was Jesus was unwavering in this plan. In 2023, I see more people making decisions based on what makes us comfortable in the short term than ever before. The products we consume, the things that we're like, I'm consuming this now, even though I see the warning on the package, or I remember last time I did this, and how I will feel later, whether it's how I will feel physically, how I will feel emotionally, or financially, consuming this product or using this product. The activities we participate in. I know that if I do this, it feels good now, but it is an activity that actually goes against the things that I want to live for and the person I want to be tomorrow. The relationships we spend time in. And sometimes we go, well, I need to spend time with these people because they're family or they're friends, and I don't want to abandon them. But then there's the cross in that line where all of a sudden we're not influencing them for good. They're influencing us in a direction we don't want to go. Even our thoughts and the opinions that we meditate on. I can't tell you how many times someone will ask me if I watch a certain show, and I'll say, I watched the first 2 episodes, but the way that the tone, the language, whatever, I just found myself after watching 1 episode being a different person. Just the things that would pop into my head, the things I was thinking about. And you know this, that's why some of us don't watch horror movies. It's not because we think like, oh, there's really clowns out there that are with hammers that are gonna, No, it's that I don't want this affecting my thoughts. I don't want every time that I walk into a dark room, or every time I close my eyes. And if you have kids, you're like, they're even more susceptible, or are they? Or are we really the same, but maybe we're just more inundated with it. Maybe we're just more broken. Kurt read this earlier. Jesus tells him for the second time that to be a follower of Jesus and the Jesus way, to be part of the kingdom of God, you're going to have to put your needs, your wants, second. Self-sacrifice over self-service. Jesus says this in verse 24. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life, which is a strong word. He could have vanillaed that out a little bit, right? He could have said, whoever wants to casually not have as much control of their life. No, he says loses. Like when I lost my keys or my phone, whoever loses their life, as in I don't have control right now. That feeling when you can't find your keys and you're supposed to leave 10 minutes ago, that lack of control. Whoever loses their life, loses control of their life, will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? And I'd like to read verse 26. What good will it be for anyone to gain the whole, to become number one, yet forfeit their soul? See, to be a follower of Jesus, there is no membership fee. There's no physical fitness test or strength or endurance test. There's no memorization test, knowledge test. There's no dress code. There's no required mission trip for 2 years or anything like that. It's actually much harder. It's making myself second, not last. There's kind of a movement within religious organizations of you have to just destroy your life and appear like nothing is good. No, God created us to love our lives. The fruit of the Spirit that should grow in our lives is love and joy and peace, patience, good things that we want in our lives. One reason I believe our society so badly wants to become number one in most areas is due to how badly they've been treated by leaders. I need to take control of my life because I've been let down by other people. You guys have heard this saying, I think I put it on the screen. Employees do not quit jobs, they quit bosses, right? Probably getting more amens, right? All of you that 1,000 thoughts for one word are oh, I got some thoughts. I got some thoughts about that. It's very difficult to be in a place of sacrificing your own wants for the greater good if the one in charge of the greater good is someone you don't trust. Peter was having a hard time trusting Jesus there. He was having a hard time. Jesus, I've seen you heal people. I've seen you do incredible things that only God can do. But I don't trust this plan. And I think that's what we deal with every single day. Because I think most of us at one point in our life have said, I don't think I can do this without help. But who can I ask to help me? Who can I trust? Who can I tell these things to? Who actually has an answer for the things that I've messed up again and again and again? Jesus says, you can trust me. That if you want, you can gain the whole world but forfeit your soul. Or you can give your life to following me and you can trust me with your life. And you can become second. Now, there are two different ways that we can respond to this, and these are two extremes. One, someone can say, this is awesome. The creator of the universe loves me, cares about me, like the songs we sing. Wow, I'm still a part of my life. I can learn more and I can walk with Jesus. This is amazing. But the other side of it is not that this is awesome, it's that it's awful. God is controlling me. I'm being told what to do and what not to do. I'm not trusted to know what's best for my life. And here's the people that love this and say it's awesome. It's the people Jesus described in chapter 5. Do you remember the Sermon on the Mount? He says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst, those who don't have great relationships. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for it. Jesus knows that the people that respond so well to following him are the ones who have admitted, I can't do this. And I live in a world where, guess what? I'm in number 2, that I say, God, this is awful. Why can't you just supplement what I'm getting wrong? The places that I stink at, can't you just come in here and fix those like a good parent does? Like, just helicopter me a little bit? Just come in here? We got to say, no, actually, I'm not a halfway God. I'm 100%. That in order for you to follow me, it requires for you to trust me. And so if that's you today, and it's just really hard to become second to your own life, you're not alone. It took me a long time to get to a place where I could say, God, I will be second to you. And I still struggle daily. I think it's not that I'm thriving, it's I'm just stumbling forward. That every time I fall, I'm falling forward. And that I have people around me, you guys, in fact, that I know that no matter how low I am Saturday night, that Sunday is coming, I have to see you guys. That I know that I have people in my life, and I would love more people in my life, that I can go to, and when they say, how are you? And I say, fine, they say, BS. No, you're not. To become second means we just confess that I, by myself, will run my life into the ground. Or will become number one and be completely empty. I'm not the only one, though, that has that story. I want you guys to watch this video. It was about 15 minutes, and I cut it down to 7. So go ahead and watch this video. You might recognize the people in it, and then we'll close. We're at a place in our lives where the flow and the pressure to say, I have no problems, I've got this taken care of, is at an ultimate pressure. I can't show weakness. I can't show that I don't have this. And I think what makes a church a beautiful thing, what makes a church God's church, is that we can be people that say, hey, I'm second. Well, the pastor must be, no, the pastor. Well, this leader must be first, or you know, like an older saint in the church. No. That Jesus Christ can be number one in our church and in our lives. And that allows us to say he can have control. Doesn't mean that we don't do anything. Doesn't mean that we just sit back. Doesn't mean that we go back to having naps in our schedule all of a sudden. But that in these moments where we might feel like we were on top of the world yesterday and at the bottom today, that he's with us. And that the difference between that life of freedom, that life of bondage, that life of joy, and that life of despair and sorrow often is who has the hands on the wheel of our lives. That he was saying, Peter, I'm going to save you from a lot of hurt. That I must die. I must suffer. And Jesus modeled what it looked like to be a suffering servant, or a servant leader is a term we use a lot. And so as we are standing here, we're going to close our eyes to pray in a moment. But what I want you to do is imagine another place that you're going to be. We're going to do that in a second. You don't have to do it yet. And I want you to just say, God, allow me to be a servant leader in this place. So go ahead and close your eyes. I'll just walk you through this. Imagine another place right now that you're going to be this week. I'm not going to give you examples. And I want you to silently pray, God, make me second to you in this place. After you pray that, pray, God, show me now, just in my imagination, show me what can change, what can happen, what beauty can be restored if I am able to just follow you in this place. Would relationships be restored? Would joy grow in places that joy has never been? I think that's the difference that Jesus makes. It isn't so much that we have to sing songs in those places, but that we have to be second to him. So I'm going to pray. You can keep your eyes shut. Thanks, God,